course, now I've just lost all my questions.
You're going to have to wing it now.
Yeah, I'm going to have to wing it. Well, actually, so let me sort of dive into right now and looking at the current climate in terms of what you're working in, coming from, was it Hong Kong?
Hong Kong immediately
and now coming to Toronto.
Yeah.
What has that transition been like for you?
Look, the transition's been remarkably good. To be honest, I expected the transition to be a lot more difficult than it actually has been. I think when you're traveling and relocating your family to a new country, you worry first about, how well they're going to integrate into society and school and, friends and so on and so forth. But it's been really good. I mean, I think Canadians generally are very friendly people, very welcoming, and it's just been lovely to have folks reach out and say hi to us and welcome us into their communities. The school has just done a phenomenal job with helping our kids meet other kids, and they did that over the summer period before school actually started. But it meant that when they went to school for the very first day, they had, at least build a network with the kids in the year that they were in,
right.
And that just made it so much easier. So the induction into Toronto and into Canada has been tremendous so far. We're absolutely delighted with how that's gone. And the kids, actually, I asked the kids because they loved Hong Kong, and quite frankly, you can still see the claw marks on the way to the airport as we drag them off. But I got to say, I asked them over the weekend, so you guys loved Hong Kong. How's it been here in Canada, in Toronto? And they said, we really like it. It's been great. I said, okay, so how does it compare to Hong Kong? And they said, we like it more. So
well,
that's I don't think we could have got a better compliment from them than that. So that's kind of cool.
That's a great start.
Helping us with that is that we've just got a new puppy. So they've got a new dog, and we promised them a puppy for a long time, and we finally did it now that we've moved to a place.
Well, you have to move, and you get a puppy.
That was part of the bribing.
Well, you know what? We do like to bribe our kids, don't we? Just a little bit, everyone? Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your personal career journey. What have been the highlights of your overall personal career journey so far? And when did you know that you were going to aspire? When did you know that you would be where you are today? Right.
So I've been blessed with an amazing career. I've had opportunities to really experience different parts of the world and different areas of industry. And I started at the ripe old age of 17. I finished year 12, I think you call it grade 12 here.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished high school, and before going to university, I thought I'd want to earn some pocket money before actually getting on and moving to college. And I opened the paper and I basically just applied for the first job I saw, and it was with Citibank. So it was supposed to be a 3-month period just to fill time in the vacation period, and it ended up being 28 years that I was with Citi. But in that time, I've just been blessed with incredible opportunities to travel abroad and work in different countries. As you mentioned earlier, after 9 years in Sydney, we went to Singapore, and I ran Citi's. In fact, we built a data warehouse for Citi across Asia Pacific when I was there. From Singapore, went to Thailand. I was in Thailand for 5 years, and then we came back to Sydney. And then again, I had the opportunity to work across Asia Pacific in the last role before joining Manulife. So I've been really absolutely blessed with these tremendous opportunities to work in different countries and in different areas. To the later part of your question, did I ever think that did I have this bold ambition to be the CEO and president of a major multinational company? A lot of folks in similar situations often say, yeah, when I was 6 years old, I made the decision. And that certainly wasn't the case for me. And to be frank, I've just sort of had a philosophy which was immerse yourself in the job that you're in, be passionate about what you do. If you love what you do, you'll make the most of that opportunity. And I always wanted to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And again, if I did that, often bigger opportunities emerged, and that just took me from one part of the world to another, and from one opportunity to another, and that was just a huge, phenomenal part of how my career evolved and developed over time.
Obstacles? Were there any obstacles that came your way? I mean, as you said, you're very, very fortunate, and you took the matters of think outside the box, look at different opportunities, put yourself forward. But any obstacles that you experienced in your journey to where you are now?
Lots of obstacles. In fact, people often ask me how would I define the quality of a great leader, and I would say first and foremost, it's about actually overcoming obstacles. And I couldn't count the number of times that I've had challenges and difficulties that.
What was your toughest? Or one that really does stick out?
Okay, so the one of the toughest ones for me was when I was in Thailand, and I started there as the CFO of the Thai business for Citi, and I went from running a department that had 35 people to then being asked to lead the marketing and sales department, which basically had 680 people. And I thought I was ready for that role. I thought I knew the business, I knew the industry, I had all the technical skills that were really there to enable success in that role. And I went in with that attitude, and I was failing miserably. And quite frankly, after about 4 months in the role, I was thinking, Jesus, this is not working. I'm going to have to sort of quit. I'm going to have to leave. And the reason why that was so difficult for me was that with all the technical training that I had, with all the knowledge that I had, what I didn't appreciate is that to be a success in a leadership role like that, which required the ability to connect with so many different levels of the organization. So I went from having 35 people where I could put them in a room and actually have a chat about the vision that we had for the department or what we wanted to do and get direct feedback, to having 680 people where you couldn't actually have that conversation. I didn't appreciate the skill of being a leader and of being a manager of managers and the importance of communication in that agenda. So the need to be able to inspire people, the need to be able to cascade and delegate authority to others, and then to have a mechanism where you can get feedback on what's working and what's not real time and then adjust. That was completely alien to me. When you're managing 35 people, you don't really need that skill. So that was certainly a big learning for me, and it wasn't something that I was prepared for, and it was incredibly difficult, and had to obviously learn on the fly and then overcome that barrier before I was going to actually drive any success in that role.
One thing that we notice now in business, one area that's constantly on the top of mind that's growing is, of course, diversity. We look at this room and we see it right here, how diverse this room is. So having that diversity within the company, and if the company doesn't have that level of diversity based on your definition of what is required, how do you achieve that? So what are the kinds of things that you've done or you're doing now to ensure diversity, and not just, we're talking gender, culture, but also diversity of mind as well, because we know that the business is ever changing. It's not the cookie cutter business that we knew, say, maybe 20 years ago. Yeah.
So I think you're 100% right, Angie, and I think the first thing is to appreciate that diversity isn't something you can bucket in one categorization. People often make the mistake of thinking diversity is all about gender or all about race. And for me, the first point of the journey is to actually appreciate that diversity is diversity of thought. And you've got to start with, an acknowledgement that diversity is absolutely critical to organizations. And then you've got to answer the question, which is why? Why is diversity critical? Because it kind of sounds cool and you want to tick a box on a PowerPoint presentation that you put to your board, but why is diversity critical? And for me, it comes down to two things. The first is diversity enables better decision-making. And better decision-making is an enablement for any organization. The second thing is that's the corporate why. The individual why is to allow individuals that work for your organization to be their true self and to be appreciated for their true self. And that results in fulfillment from a job satisfaction perspective, and then the ability to actually achieve your career potential. If you can be appreciated for who you are and what you bring in its fullest, then you don't have to cover that or hide who you are or somehow try to conform to what's expected because of the cultural norms that exist, then it's limiting from an individual's perspective. So I think it starts with those whys. And again, I think it then is obviously a journey of making sure you can actually create an environment that facilitates that. But that is difficult. There are issues that prevent that.
And how do you compare, you've obviously worked in many different other countries and many other different cities. How would you make that comparison? And I know it might be a difficult question to answer because you've only been here for a few months.
Yeah.
But make that comparison between, say, Hong Kong or Australia, for example, to what you see in Canada.
Yeah.
But not only just diversity, say, within the workforce of your team, but diversity at the board level where you are.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is that I think the issue is a universal issue. Everywhere I've worked, I've seen that diversity or embracing diversity is not something that people do very well. It's certainly an area that is getting a lot more focus and attention, but organizations and quite frankly communities struggle with it. So if you want to embark on the journey of actually fixing that, you have to understand why is it that we struggle with it. And for me, it comes down to a very simple rationale. And that is that human nature is such that people want to be surrounded by other people that typically would see things the same way that they do. There's no real malice in that. People don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to screw diversity in the company. It is because people want to be surrounded with people who are generally going to be agreeable.
Right.
And the fallacy with that is they think that by having people that are agreeable with you, you've got better teamwork because people are nodding when you say something. And because of that, you're going to get stuff done quicker. But that's a fallacy. And I think it's a fallacy because, again, going back to the point I made earlier, and that is that companies are better when they make better decisions. And if you've got people that have got different backgrounds, different experiences, different knowledge sets, different views on a problem, and you embrace that, and if you have a rigorous debate in the meeting room, you're going to end up in a better place. Now, people find that uncomfortable, so you have to actually appreciate that, and you have to be quite secure in yourself as a leader to embrace this philosophy. So I think that is really where the journey needs to begin. And to your point around different cultures, and certainly my experiences globally have been that this is something that every country that I've operated in has, and every company has struggled with. What's going for Canada is that you've got a very multicultural society. In fact, we were talking about this earlier, and that is, and actually one of the statistics, I'm not quite sure if this is 100% accurate, but someone has shared, and this has been a few people that have shared this with me, but they told me that in Toronto, 50% of the population were born overseas. Now that sounds like a remarkably high statistic. Is that about right?
Not so much these days.
Okay, so that may have changed.
Not so much these days, but I mean, if you were to go back into the 70s, when my parents came here, for example, in terms of the number of South Asians, we had 5 families, and we all just kind of congregated together because that's all we knew. There were no temples, there were no places to buy the type of food that my parents were familiar with until you sort of moved into the 80s and 90s, and now all of a sudden, funny enough, we would do stories about this boom of diversity, and you'd be like, well, no, not really. They've all been here, but they've just figured out how to open up stores and how to, get the product here as well. But if you were to look at your demographic, I mean, if you look at the demographic of your team and the individuals that are working at Manulife, you probably would find that percentage to be pretty accurate.
So that's quite impressive. I think you should obviously be very proud of that. I think that's a great thing, and certainly something that allows Canada and I guess Toronto to differentiate itself on the global scene, because that's certainly not a statistic in other parts of the world. And again, I would have thought that Australia and Sydney is a very multicultural place, but I'll tell you that stat in Sydney is 25%. So 25% of the people in Sydney were born overseas. A lot of second generation migrants like myself, but first generation is still very limited. So I think generally there's certainly the recipe for a much more diverse operating environment here, and I'm generally seeing that people are embracing the idea of diversity, and there's certainly less resistance to it. And certainly from a Manulife perspective, this is an area that we're very passionate about, we're very focused on, and we are improving our diversity, I guess our the way we're measuring it, and ultimately how we're moving the needle. If I think about my leadership team, we've gone we've made some great progress in creating more Asian diversity, more gender diversity. Our board is now represented by 40% female board members. So we have gone quite a long way, but we're really only just scratching the surface of the journey and have much more to do in that space.
We've got I'm looking at the time here, so we do have a little extra time. I did want to touch upon a little bit more on the female representation. And you mentioned 40% of the board is female. how important is that to have that type of representation there? We clearly know that men and women do think differently. Men will tackle a problem in a particular way, women will tackle a problem in a particular way. But in terms of where you are in your position and having that female feedback, what has that learning curve been like for you in comparison to, say, other places that you've worked, but also the benefit in terms of the importance in terms of your views in terms of why we need to have that?
Look, I think it goes back to this idea that you have to embrace the idea of diversity. You have to embrace this philosophy that we're going to be a better organisation if we have a more diverse representation in our leadership positions of not only our customer base but of our workforce. And I think we're certainly seeing from a leadership team perspective that we're benefiting from that. The diversity we have from a gender perspective or from a background, history, race perspective is really enabling much better decisions. And it's got to come with greater confidence in the leadership team to debate and disagree. So the most important ingredient for me is that you've got to respect different views and you've got to encourage debate. If you suppress debate, you're really killing diversity and you're forcing worse decision making. But if you can actually encourage people to bring to the table a perspective that others have not got and that they're going to be rewarded for that, it doesn't mean that we have to agree with it, but if we can actually bring that perspective, it allows the management team to think more broadly about the problem that they're actually trying to solve. I think that's a great thing, and we certainly have benefited from that as an organisation, and I value that highly.
One thing that I had read about you, that you were someone who wanted to instill change and in some ways shape things up. And there was something that you talked about in terms of the insurance system, how you said it was extremely, I may not be using the exact term to quote you, but I mean, it was very backward. It was very
Dark Ages.
The Dark Ages. The Dark Ages. In terms of, I think you referred to like, a 20-page document of some sort that people needed to fill out. With that type of mentality of being able to move this insurance in itself forward, what kinds of things were you looking at doing in terms of taking us out of the Dark Ages?
Yeah. So again, any journey has got to begin with an honest look at where your starting point is. And a large part of the rhetoric that I've been out there with in relation to our starting point has been about ensuring that we see the problem for what it is. And the reality is that consumers have evolved dramatically over the last 10, 15 years in terms of the way that they engage with each other and the way they engage with corporations. Again, it's very rare for someone to not pull out their phone in a 5-minute slot and to actually transact in some way, shape or form. The reality is our industry has not evolved to embrace that way that consumers want to interact. And as you say, the application forms for an insurance policy are typically 16, 20 pages long, 128 questions. It's a very painful process. It's not very customer friendly. So for us, the journey begins with an appreciation of where we are, and it's not necessarily a great place. We want to, and we aspire to be much more customer centric. We want to be working with customers or engaging with customers in the way that they want to engage and the way, quite frankly, that they are engaging today in their lives. And that's going to require us to change the way we do things. We have to leverage technology. We have to think about making our customer touch points a lot more user-friendly. People are starved for time. Time is now the most precious commodity that exists. And we have to reorient our processes so that consumers can actually engage with us in a way that's incredibly time efficient. Customers demand instant now.
Right.
Again, you don't go onto the iTunes store. You don't go onto iTunes anymore. You go to Spotify, right? And you want a song. You want to listen to it. You want it like that. You don't sort of fill out a form and wait 3 days and get the song. But that's the way you work with insurance companies. It's a painful, elongated process. So we've got to sort of work in the world of where our customers are, and that is a world which is instant, which is simple, which is intuitive, which is digitally enabled. And that's going to require us to invest money in technology that will help facilitate that. It's going to require us to invest in capabilities around reorienting and reimagining the customer experience. And then really working with customers to evolve that and pivot as we go. Now we're obviously already starting that journey, and we've had some great success, but there's still a long way for us to go. And there's anyone that wants a job and has got a capability in that area,
It's being recorded.
send me your email.
Okay, we'll keep them here as long as we can. Of course, we are here with Ascend Canada. Organizations like this, why, I mean, I know why, but why for you and for your business and for your employees and for this industry, why are groups like this so important?
Well, I think groups like this are incredibly important, and it's phenomenal to see as many people as there are here today joining an event like this. And again, I think what's critical is that we talk about the importance of diversity and we allow folks to share their war stories, talk about the experiences, what worked, what didn't. The learning that will come on in terms of how organizations evolve and quite frankly how individuals can drive their own success will come not just through sitting in a classroom and listening to some presentation, but rather by sharing their experiences and leveraging the network. So I think Ascend just does a phenomenal job. I'm delighted to be here, and we're, as a company, absolutely excited about being associated with Ascend. And we think that organizations like this that promote the dialogue and that allow members to get skills or to skill themselves up and then leverage a network are phenomenal. So we certainly will continue to support this organization, and would really encourage everyone to make the most use of the facilities that Ascend is out there sharing with you all.
So with that, of course, we heard the theme, Innovate to Differentiate, is the 2017 theme this year. How has Manulife done that, or is doing that, or is looking to do that?
So for us, it's going to be a huge part of our agenda. I mentioned earlier that we're embarking on this program of really transforming ourselves, and in doing so, hopefully transforming the industry as well. And there's no one magic silver bullet to solve that problem. So we're tackling it on a variety of fronts. I think the first thing that we're doing is getting a lot of proof of concepts out there. So we've got a lot of tests where we're experimenting with pilots in market that really go towards testing certain philosophies. Digital apps, for example. Digital claims in China. We're doing WeChat claims at the moment where you can, for example, leave a doctor's office, take a photo of the receipt, and have the claim instantly paid into your WeChat account before you actually leave the doctor's office. So one part of the agenda is that we ramp up aggressively the pilots that we're doing and the experimentation. Another big part of our innovation agenda is to actually create a culture around innovation and teaching folks, what innovation actually means and how they can actually drive innovation as a way of thinking on their own, in terms of their own everyday job. So culture and training is certainly another big part of that agenda. But then we're also making some big bets. We're making big strategic investments in companies that are fantastic at innovation, or startups that have actually embarked on the journey. And the learnings that we're getting from those companies are also phenomenal for us, but also paving the way for big business partnerships that are actually going to pay big dividends, but at the same time teach us along the way.